This program is proudly brought to you by the Peel Dance Bar, corner of Peel and Wellington Streets, Collingwood.
G'day, we're at the Peel Hotel in Melbourne, yes, Melbourne, Australia. We're doing drugs. Well, we're not doing drugs at the Peel Hotel. We're going to do a show about drugs, intravenous drug usage, stuff like that. But I'd like to dedicate this show to the past members of BENT who have died from overusing, addiction, whatever, and people in the community that are dying out there right now, and for many of us who have buried lovers and stuff from whacking up, basically. So is there a problem? We have to find this stuff out. So before we get into that, I want to introduce you to the guests. Now I'm going to start over here with Drew. Now Drew is a regular, as we all know. Drew... Too regular. Except you have been an addict.
I am an addict.
No, well, look at what happened this week, but we'll come back to that later.
No, it's the realisation I am an addict.
Okay, well,
That's the first step.
First step, you've done that, which is cool.
It's only 48 hours.
Yeah, you're doing well. He scratches quite well these days. KD, who are you, what do you do?
I'm from the Foot Patrol Needle Syringe Program, and I've been working with injecting drug users for the last 10 years out and about around Melbourne.
Great. And Darren, you give away drugs. Who are you?
I'm Darren Russell. I'm a general practitioner at the Prahran Market Clinic and also president of the Victorian AIDS Council, and I've prescribed methadone for about the last 11 years.
It's great. In fact, you prescribe it. You know the story. They don't. It's one of my dead best friends, which was good. It helped him for a long time. Okay, moving around. Who are you?
I'm Tessa, and I smoke marijuana.
Yeah, she's a smoker. She does admit it. That's two BENT users so far we've come across on the panel so far. Dash, what do you do?
I work for the Hepatitis C Council of Victoria, and we work with the general community, but I sort of have focused on prisons and body art.
Gotcha. David, Voon, who do you work for?
I'm with the Victorian AIDS Council with the education program there. Worked in an injecting drug use project for the past 3 years. And I think that's that.
But we'll be coming back to you.
Yes.
Because we had a bit of a debate with David over some of his views. I disagree with some of them. That's okay.
Okay, we'll talk.
Yeah, we will. Now, Leon, you're a Sydney bit of trash.
I'm a Sydney bit of trash. I work with the Victorian Drug Use Group, BBB, and we're a fully funded government-funded drug-using group.
Right. So all of you are funded by government, is this correct?
Yeah.
Right, so they'll be careful what they're about to say because they'll be afraid of losing their jobs. I'm going to come back to them. I'm going to find out, we're going to produce some footage. If we're not ready for the footage yet, we're not, yeah, Kel, thanks Kel. Do you use drugs, floor person? I just want to ask you publicly on air. While we find out who uses drugs, who's ever been an addict? I'll start with you, Leon.
I've been an addict.
What of?
Nicotine, alcohol, I've had my fair share of illicit drugs.
Right, have you ever whacked up?
Yes.
Right, well there you go, on air. We're going to come back because we're about to go to footage, I think, but I'll keep going. David?
Nicotine, caffeine.
Caffeine. Quickly, Dash?
Nicotine, alcohol, coffee, and speed.
Smoking pot, nicotine.
Can't admit to any addiction, sorry.
Truckloads of pot, heaps of alcohol, and my fair share of other substances.
Marijuana and ecstasy.
Okay, are we going to go to this footage now? Right, we'll go there right now.
Now, drugs are a huge thing on the gay scene. Would you agree?
Yep, definitely.
Now, do you know anybody who takes drugs?
No.
You don't know anybody who takes drugs at all? You do? You're being sarcastic.
Yeah, I am.
What about actually the way you take it, using needles, in terms of that sort of thing? Where would you draw the line?
At the needle.
You wouldn't take... Why is that?
I don't know. I just feel that for anyone to, drugs are supposed to be a social thing, and
anyone that has to, get a needle and inject themselves, it sort of takes the whole fun and sociable aspect away from it, I guess, yeah.
Should the gay scene be doing anything to stop this, the taking of drugs in its community?
No, I don't think so. I mean, everyone has their own minds. They can make up your own mind if you want to take drugs or not.
Okay, so drugs are a huge, huge problem in society at the moment. 20,000 people died from drugs overdoses last year, most of which were from alcohol and tobacco, but quite a few also from IV drugs and party drugs as well. So do you know anybody who takes party drugs or IV drugs?
Yes, I do. I know quite a lot of people that have taken IV drugs as well as party drugs.
So where do you draw the line between party drugs and IV drugs, or where should somebody draw the line?
I don't think there's any line. I think it's an individual use.
In terms of the gay and lesbian community, what would you say is there a particular appeal for use of drugs in the gay and lesbian? Is there a particular culture there that encourages drug use?
I find that heaps of gay and lesbian people use drugs. I find that it's too much. I find that it's very sad, it's very superficial. They've lost themselves in that realm, and perhaps it's because a lot of people have been rejected when they came out gay or lesbian, and they have had problems of hiding things, and then all of a sudden they can be free. They have lots of friends. They're not necessarily the rejects in school because they talked funny or because they didn't quite fit in. So all of a sudden they've got friends and everyone's taking drugs and everything feels great and there's no restrictions. You don't notice that your world around you is changing. You don't notice that it's... You might think that when you're getting agitated with your partner or your friend that it's normal, and maybe you're just going through some emotional change or whatever, a relationship breakup, friendship breakup, but things start to fall apart, and while you're on them you don't actually notice till quite later on down the track. I just think that you just hope that you depend on everybody's individual intelligence, that they can pull themselves out of it. They've had their fun by the time they reach 25 or 28, but they've had a fun time and they've lived it up and they've partied all night or ended up at the same party 3 days later and they've enjoyed themselves. But then there comes a point where they start to say, no, I don't want that anymore, and my career, my lifestyle and things are more important.
Hey, that was Luke. He was in Commercial Road in Melbourne, doing that footage. In fact, I was there last night in Commercial Road, and as people know, I think Commercial Road is a shithole. I think it's full of vanilla people and blandness, and there is a lot of drug usage there, like everywhere. And I was talking to two people who'd whacked up last night. It wasn't my household. That were other people that had whacked up last night, and God knows how many others there were. So, guys, is there a problem?
Yeah. I think clearly it's hard to say there's not a problem, and I think different people see the problem as being in different places. Some people see drugs as the problem, other people see drug use or needles as the problem, other people see the laws as the problem. Clearly there's a problem if we've got 20,000 people dying of tobacco, alcohol, and those 800 dying of illicit drug use every year. Yeah, there's a problem.
You lot?
I think there's a problem because so many people are being imprisoned, and so many people through illicit drug use are being forced into crime.
Right, so we've got 3 new prisons, privatised prisons, opening in Victoria shortly. Possibly.
Yeah.
And we'll just put them all away and forget the problem really exists. Who else has got a comment?
Well, there are problems from the user's perspective too, as well as society. There are a lot of people whose lives have been damaged in some way, whose relationships, whose work has been damaged, homeless, whatever, through drugs. And there's a lot out there.
I would dispute that it is actually through drugs, because I don't think people yet have the opportunities to explore whether their lives would be different if we didn't have this kind of illicit drug dichotomy. So I feel that there may actually be differences if we explored that more as a community.
I mean, that could be true, but at the moment we're not in a position to be able to do that. The laws are quite
The laws are there, which which leaves us in the shithole every day. But
we've got to deal with them.
It is something to work towards.
I think drug taking is a symptom of far deeper personal darkness and struggle from within yourself. I think the drug taking is just a symptom.
I think that can be true for some, but for others,
for me,
it's
it is a symptom.
Yeah,
for sure. I mean, I can only speak about myself and my personal experience, but
David, speak loudly. Don't let this white trash come
I won't. I'm a bit wary about talking about drug use as being symptomatic of something that's going on psychologically for the person, because I think coming back to what Leon was saying,
why do you say that? Why?
Because then it problematises the person, and just as Leon was saying, yes, there's a problem, but the problem gets put in different places. Some people say it's a drug.
Have you ever been chemically addicted to drugs, serious drugs?
No, not to serious drugs.
So you couldn't possibly even begin to imagine what it's like.
No, I can't.
You can't.
But what I'm saying is that a lot of the time people would say that it's something that's it's the person, but I think that part of it also is that it's the society that's also putting the responsibility when we talk about how it's a personal psychological thing. Then it puts a responsibility on the individual, where I think that society actually has to take some responsibility as well, and it actually contributes to what's actually happening. And to say that it's only symptomatic what's happening for the person is to cut out the other end of the equation, and I think that's wrong. And I think that's where we have to start bringing in where we as a community, where we as other human beings are responsible for each other, and how we actually work towards that. And that's a big question.
I didn't choose to become a drug addict.
No.
I chose to take away the darkness. And that was the only way that I could do it at 15 years of age. It's the only way. If I hadn't have taken drugs, I would have been dead at 16. Because I just couldn't survive and cope in society.
Doesn't that make you both right then? Like individually you're saying, okay, I've reached this problematic kind of stage with my drug use, but also, identifying social factors.
Yeah.
But this is supposing that there's problems in taking drugs, which there are for some people, but you can go down Commercial Road and there might be someone who once or twice a year takes an ecstasy. They're still a drug user. They wouldn't regard themselves as having a problem, and a lot of people wouldn't, but then some people in society would still say that.
So are we concentrating on users or addiction here on this program?
We want to cover
What's
all.
the difference?
What is the difference?
What is the difference? I think a lot of people, around the gay scene especially, people think you're an addict if you use a needle, you're an addict if you're a dependent user, or you're a user if you use a needle, or there's so many sort of different ways to look at it. I don't know what the difference is.
I think an addict is someone that lives it, breathes it. It's their whole life. It's a mistress. She controls you. She won't let you have any friends. She takes absolute control. You have no life. You wake up in the middle of the night, you've got to have a bomb. You go back to sleep. You wake up in the morning.
Okay, we're going to come back.
24 hours. Constant.
Shut up, drug user. We know. Blah, blah, blah. We're coming back. We're out of here. I'm going to find out more from you lot in a second. We're at the Peel. When we do come back, Hotel in Melbourne. We're talking about drugs. In fact, there are drugs everywhere. And last night on Commercial Road, in the venues, there were drugs, and there were people waking up and had whacked up before they went out. But don't look at me like that. Now, I want to go back and find out, what do you do in your agency?
Our agency is a Victorian drug use group, so we do advocacy, we do representation, we do consulting, we do peer education, we do stuff on the streets, and we try and do policy change also, and change in every way, personally and socially and politically.
Great. Thanks, Leon. I want to move around. David, what do you do?
I'm with the VAC. I'm with the education program, and we do safe sex and HIV prevention education, material production, pamphlets, resources, that sort of stuff.
Great. And far too much paper. I hasten to add again. Dash.
I work with the Hepatitis C Council, and the reason why I'm here today is hepatitis C has affected the injecting drug community to a fairly large extent.
We'll jump past you two and go to another paid agency worker.
I'm with the Foot Patrol, which is outreach needle syringe program in the city. We're based on the streets, so we walk around the biggest street drug market in Melbourne with our backpacks and hand out needles and syringes on the streets. A bloodborne virus prevention program.
Right, now we know Darren's a wealthy capitalist, has rips people off, takes money from the government and deals drugs, being a good GP, plus being head of VAC. And of course we have two vent members here who are honest enough to come on air and admit that they've used drugs and have been addicted. Tell us about your addiction. Now, we've heard your addiction.
Not a matter of have been, I am.
Yeah, we know that's
Sorry.
going to ask. Addiction.
Addiction. Well, basically, I just came on because I've been smoking pot not for a hell of a long time, but long enough for me. And it's hard just to stop and say, okay, well, I don't want any more. So basically, I'm just here to find out, where someone like me or someone who's thinking about giving up any kind of drug can go to, or even someone that you can go to talk to, or programs that help you get off.
Okay, that's an important one. Programs. What are you offering?
There's lots of educational programs, and we've heard that from you guys. But what about people who want to get out counselling services and stuff, and to get away from drugs and all the shit?
Okay, let's start with Doctor.
It's difficult, I think. There are a lot of people who've got problems, and there's a finite number of resources. And I find personally marijuana is one of the most difficult things to deal with. There are very few programs around, there's very few resources. We don't have any other medication we can substitute and then wean you off. So from our point of view, it's difficult. We can offer drug counselling to a certain extent and send people off, but how effective it is another thing. Sometimes it just lets people understand why they're still using the drug, but they still keep using the drug.
Okay, let's assume it was another drug. Where would you send them to?
Well, if it were heroin, for instance, from my point of view as a doctor, that's not such a big problem because I've got a nice other drug called methadone or another one called buprenorphine now that I can offer. And as a doctor in the medical model, that often works quite well for people. Not for everyone, but for some people. Speed is a problem. We don't have much we can substitute there. And speed users are often, I think, different to heroin users, and they'll often use for a period of time, sort of binge and then stop, and then binge and then stop, and there's psychological effects that can happen there too. And now we're seeing a bit of cocaine, which I've never really seen before, but that's causing problems for some people as well, and I don't have a clear handle what to do on that.
What do you mean? It's too expensive.
Yeah,
and it's cut.
But
and don't look at me like I declare it's my favourite drug in the world. Come on, Katie, you know that. No, but seriously.
People have been getting it because it's actually been cheaper recently and better quality than the heroin's been, because heroin's been hard to get, so people have been switching to other drugs to whatever they can get. And some people have found they like cocaine or speed or pills or marijuana or whatever it is.
Okay, now you're a bunch of out fags and dykes. I have pictures quite blatantly this way. But the other agency, how queer friendly are they?
Viv Age is pretty. I mean, a lot of our staff identify as queer, gay, bi, or lesbian. And the work we do, I mean, we do a lot of work, with agencies, do a lot of meetings with government, do a lot of work with users. Obviously, I think
that would be fascinating. Having time to have meetings.
Incredible, unique, but yeah, fun.
So you're queer friendly. You're obviously queer friendly.
Obviously.
Keep going.
Our service would be queer friendly.
Queer friendly. Well, what about the other places like the Windanas and the other support services? I mean, I've heard it mentioned before. In fact, Drew mentioned it. Where does he go to get counselling when he can't afford it? And where do you send him, Darren?
It can be a real problem. Over the last 10 years or so, with economic rationalisation, people have had to start paying for services that used to be free, and that's a real problem if you're spending a lot of your money on rent, food and your drugs perhaps. So we use the Victorian AIDS Council quite a bit. They have very cheap counselling. It's on a sliding scale depending on your income. Places like Windana are either cheap or free. Odyssey House provide very cheap or free services, Buoyancy as well. So there are various agencies around. Some of them are more gay friendly than others.
I think that is the issue about what's happened in sort of like in terms of economic senses, because whether a service is gay friendly or queer friendly, there's also issues about how much funding they're getting and how much pressure they're under and what their workers have to do. And like most services, they probably target to sort of like to have a broad catchment, but there's that thing about giving a service to the easiest people, that it's giving a service to the easiest people. And if you're presenting with multiple issues and sometimes you slip through the system.
And that's a real problem for people with psychiatric illness too. I think that a lot of drug agencies aren't comfortable dealing with people with psychiatric illnesses, and a lot of psychiatric agencies aren't comfortable dealing with people with drug problems, and they slip through.
I wonder if drug and alcohol agencies like Udana or whatever, like they have a broad catchment, so it's anybody who presents with you know, whatever issues in relation to drug and alcohol. But are there any specific special needs then as gays and lesbians that they need to take into consideration? And that's a question that I've been thinking around.
My biggest fear about going to a support group, right, is that I'm going to be in a room full of heterosexual men that aren't going to even possibly begin to understand where I'm coming from, and that I'm going to start to experience aggression from them with regards to who I am. And I'm not even going to get the issues sorted out. I'm going to have to get new issues sorting out how I'm going to deal with these bastards.
Right.
You know?
But doesn't VAC offer that?
Do they? I don't know.
Not,
I mean, I've been screaming out for drug help for years.
Why not?
And no
Why isn't
results.
VAC offering it? Go on, the paid worker, the president, why aren't you offering it?
We're not funded to do drug and alcohol work. The funding comes from the HIV/AIDS stream,
right?
And so that's where our funding is, and that funding is quite tight also, and it's not enough to cover the complexity around HIV prevention, for one thing. So drug and alcohol work requires specialist skills and training and knowledge, which we don't have, and we have no funding for, and no resources for. So, you know, as a community organisation within the gay and lesbian community, it's about then working with other organisations like drug and alcohol agencies in terms of influencing them and challenging the homophobia that might be in these institutions, and working through there. But that takes time. Whereas what it sounds like is that there is a need, it's an urgent cry for it, and you know, when there's the system out there sounds like it might not be capable of actually meeting those.
Well, are you talking to each other?
Well, I think there's two strands. There's treatment and support,
Yes.
and they're not necessarily the same things. And some people want support, but they can only access treatment services. So, you know, it's not black and white. There is a queer support group.
Yeah,
There is.
Forget what
There's
that-
definitely
that's,
one.
Yeah.
that's
In
queer.
Melbourne.
That's
Queer,
out of
yeah.
that comes out of the Buoyancy Foundation.
Yeah.
Queer users
sort
of
in-
intravenous
That's
or
right.
illicit
drugs.
drugs.
And Buoyancy is
QID.
quite holistic. They have a broad approach to drug use.
Okay, now we've gone through those issues. We came here today to talk about whacking up, the drought. Now, I was listening to Triple R, this is a Melbourne radio station, and that was terrible camera work, I just saw that then. And I heard this ad. Now, what was this ad about, Leon?
I haven't seen the radio ad. I've seen the posters and stuff. Heard the radio ad.
You're in the paper, weren't you?
I was in the paper for it. Yes, I was. When the Drought Stop Drop campaign, which was devised by the Australian Intravenous League and launched by the state government, and it was basically in response to the fact there's been a huge heroin drought in Melbourne and throughout Australia since about January through to depending where you are now. And when the drought is over, when the heroin is back into the streets or back into the using networks, it will probably be of higher quality than it has been over the past few months, and people will be dropping.
Yep.
As history has shown us.
Oh, look, 3.5 years ago I lost my 3 best friends in 3 months.
We lost a gay boy about 2 weeks ago. It was awful.
Yeah. So, okay, so the ad, how did the ad go for people that don't know the ad? The radio one.
I haven't heard the radio one.
Oh, God, you like okay. It was, I listened, I was having a shave one morning and I just went through this whole rave about the drought, being aware, the pure smack, all that kind of stuff of what's going to occur. Which brings me to the next point, Alma Road, near St Kilda Road. Dealer lives there, big violence in the street. How much violence are you getting with the change that's occurring, the lack of smack?
I reckon it's definitely increased around. So I work in Springvale and Footscray too. It's definitely increased around there for people who can't get smack and either will go onto benzos or will do more violence to get lots of crap quality smack and stuff like that. So there's definite violence, and there has been a spate of violence in those areas specifically.
And it costs more, so you've got to do more to get the same effect because, you know, the gear's half as pure and the deals are half the size.
What are you paying at the moment?
Still 50.
Yeah, 50 for something which purity is probably half.
Yeah, and a lot smaller. So
Yeah.
someone with a $200-300 a day habit, they're probably up to about 900 at the moment.
Now, on the other level, I heard it being mentioned that because people are using cocaine more, then they're whacking up more and more. So it's becoming more expensive. Is this correct?
The cocaine.
Yeah.
I I think people were just switching to whatever they could get.
Yeah, but it's more expensive though.
It is more expensive,
Yeah.
and you don't get a hit that lasts as long, so you have to use more often, which is a problem. I know Victoria Police figures suggested there was an 18% increase in the crime rate during the drought, and that was nearly all drug-related stuff.
I would say that would be very conservative.
So that's across, I don't know if across Victoria, across
Yeah.
the metropolitan area, but a significant right.
Look at the states of attacks in the eastern suburbs on 7-Elevens and petrol stations. I mean, there's this one guy who's just gone ballistic, hasn't he? He's just doing every single one. He's doing some stores over and over and over again.
Yeah, just to get the cash up. I used to work at Richmond, and there's this trail that goes from Richmond Station down Church Street to the Commission Flats. Now, it's actually not the Asians that are dealing there, sweetheart. It's actually the white trash.
Precisely.
It actually is.
History repeats itself.
Continuously, Davey. I know. I just had to mention that again. But it's actually the poor white trash that come in from the suburbs to Richmond Station and are so desperate. So what do? It's obvious what we have to do. How are we going to tell government and tell the public to... what are we doing? Do we make it legal? Regulate it. We're coming back. We're going to talk about how to get cheap drugs out of your government. We're out here any second. No, seriously, we have to do something about it. And what are the answers? G'day, this is blah, 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 and we're talking about doing drugs. And I've just heard in the break that Muscle Marys. Now listen guys, you shit me. I was at an exchange last night. Now I should be banned there like you're banned, Drew, for making performance acts shitty. Yeah, anyway. I was there and there were all these Muscle Marys just blocking space as usual. And they shit me. They can't even dance or move. But how big are the needles they use for steroids?
19 gauge needles, which are the really thick ones, which you see on, hospital movies and stuff.
And the barrels are even bigger.
Massive barrels.
Is it IM or IV?
IM.
It's always
IM, is
IM.
it?
But some
Oh, it
people-
would have to be, it's muscular.
In the butt
Some people don't know that. I mean, some of the users don't know how to inject it. They don't know whether they've got to shoot it up into their arms or into
And
their bums.
what's IM and IV?
Intramuscular, so into the muscle, or intravenous, which is into a vein, which is where most people whack up. But even with heroin and other drugs, you can, of course, inject it into the muscle or under the skin,
Subcutaneous.
inject it anywhere.
So tell these men with little penises, lack of sex drive, and big bodies and small brains, how do they whack up?
Into the muscle.
Into the muscle. Remember that, you idiots. Into the muscle, you dumb muscle Marys. Okay, steroid use. We're on to steroid use. Big issue. Darren, doctor, tell us.
Yeah, there's a lot of anabolic steroid use in the general community, and especially amongst men. There's not nearly as much amongst women, but a small amount. And there's various groups who do it. There are the bodybuilders who are doing it to get big. There are people in the sort of bouncing or security industry who again do it as a work-related thing. Gay men traditionally have used anabolic steroids quite a bit to look good on the dance floor, to be muscle Marys, and I don't think there's anything quite so wrong with muscle Marys. I think squeezing past them is not such a bad thing at all now. And
You are such a typical non-drug using vanilla road rich doctor. Keep going.
They smell.
Yeah, and I don't want their sweat on my body.
Just like Todd off Big Brother.
They keep going to steroids.
And the other group who tend to use them are police and armed forces, again, because they're more hyper-masculine. So people take them...
You're not telling Alice Melinda's a drug user, are you?
I'm sure she would not be a drug user.
Absolutely.
I did have a drink with her the other night, but but I'm sure apart from that she wouldn't do anything.
Just as well.
And there's a lot of anabolic steroid use out there, and a lot of people don't know how to inject. Some of the people don't identify as gay and lesbian, but are having sex. They don't know how to protect themselves from bloodborne viruses such as hepatitis C, hepatitis B, HIV. It's a big problem, and it's a huge problem, I think.
Okay.
And just to broaden it out, it's not just anabolic steroids. I was reading a couple of days ago about transsexual in San Francisco talking about black market hormones, and I know I don't think it's a huge area in Melbourne, but black market hormones and not getting it through a doctor, not getting through a service, getting it on the black market and sharing needles.
I think you certainly hear about transgender people sharing with their friends what they've got, so, and they may not be aware how to inject properly.
Okay, now, I know I look like I'm 17, let's be quite honest about this, but shut up, Peter, and just use the camera, would you? But most of my friends, if they haven't died, the usual HIV smack, usual crap like that, they're dying from Hep C, because no one knew about Hep C. Big issue, Hep C.
It's a huge issue, and the issue with Hep C in the injecting drug community is that it's not just the message about clean needles anymore, it's a message about clean needles, clean filters, clean swabs, clean tourniquets, and that Hep C is a stronger virus. It can live outside of the body for longer than HIV, and basically it has a high prevalence in the injecting drug community. So it's a great shame that even if you experiment once, then you've got a fairly high, if someone's helping you to inject for the first time, you've got a fairly high risk of being infected with Hep C.
Now, hang on, I can't see what the issue is. You can get fits at chemists, you can get fits everywhere. I suppose my big issue is that most drug users are closets like fags and dykes were 25 years ago. And if you're a closet out there, don't waste our time, because we're bored with you closet queers, point one. Point two, let's get on to the users who are closets.
It's not just that you can get fits though. It's about education about how you use those fits, and
it's about technique.
Yeah.
People learn off each other because they are closets, and you know, if you learn bad technique, then you teach your friend who teaches your friend, and everyone gets
tell us what's good technique.
And it's about
sharing.
And it's about if you're using on the street, worried about the coppers round the corner, then how are you going to use that technique, even if you've been taught it? If you have to drop everything and run
off the ground, you know.
Quickly, technique. Tell us good technique.
Clean hands, clean spoon, clean arm. Put whatever it is in the spoon. Add your water. Mix it up with the end of the fit. Draw it up. Whack it in. Now you don't want anyone else to touch you. So if someone else is hitting you up, they have to go off and clean their hands in between. So everyone can use the same spoon if everyone's got clean fits. Normally we'd say, you know, use your own gear, but not everyone knows how to whack up, so it can get a bit complicated. But basically, if you're hitting someone else up and you're touching them, you have to wash your hands and stuff in between. If you're doing yourself and then you go and do someone else, because you will touch your injection site, and that's where you can get the blood transmission. Or if the spoon's dirty and someone's got a dirty fit, that's where you can get the blood transmission. You only need tiny, tiny, tiny amounts of blood. So it's about aseptic technique, that's what we call it. We could have done a demo, but
we could have, but we couldn't get anyone that would come on screen and show themselves as being a user.
Yeah.
And we can understand that jobs, careers, family. I'm not really prepared to wear that crap. That's bullshit. And there are a bunch of closets as far as I'm concerned. I know I'm a little hardline about this stuff, but what is the issue? Do we care?
If wider society had the view that illicit drug use or injecting drug use wasn't so much of a problem, wasn't a person's whole self, I think there'd be much less closets. But there's currently no law to protect someone losing their job if they come out as an injecting drug.
There was no law to stop us losing our jobs as fags and dykes and trannies and, well, bisexuals if they really exist, but I'm not going to go to that track. So what is that's not a valid excuse to me?
I mean, you could also look at it this way. A lot of people who are recreational drug users who don't seem to have a problem, who don't lose anything financially, socially, legally, any rights or anything like that, don't identify as being users, whether they inject or don't inject, so don't have any problem as such to argue for. The people who do have a problem as such, who are losing lives and losing careers and losing, you know, their home and stuff like that, they've got a lot of other shit in their plate before they can come out and do the rah-rah-rah, you know, proud out user stuff. They've got a lot of stuff to deal with. I think the society we've created, or the society we've got, makes it impossible to be out and proud as a drug user.
So you can't be out and proud. Does everyone agree with that one?
You can't, but there's also a stigma attached. Injecting is a mechanical method of administration.
Absolutely.
There's many methods of administration, but for some reason, if you inject, you're the bottom of the pile, whether that's blood-borne virus or needle phobia or whatever it is. But you know, we've got to talk about the whole range of drugs, the whole range of illicit drugs. You know, we are a drug-taking culture. Why are some licit? Why are some illicit? What is it? To me, there really isn't a difference.
Well, what do we do about it? John Swaits watches this program.
Does he?
Yeah, of course he watches it, because he needs our vote. He needs our vote, because where we live. And his posters won't go up in your doctor's suit. Now, what do we do about it? Seriously.
Well, we don't produce silly adverts on TV that cost millions and millions and millions of dollars that don't really say a lot.
Oh, like that lovely book the Feds put out. In my block of art units, 14 hit the bin. People didn't even read it. Who wanted that crap, that glossy crap? Okay, so of course...
From a man that taught Bible school at 19.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
So what do we do?
Well, we criminalise caffeine users and we decriminalise heroin users.
And other users as well.
Yeah.
It does seem very arbitrary, doesn't it, that we can have so many drugs, and not only are they sort of not illegal, they're accepted and encouraged, especially in the gay community. Alcohol and even tobacco, drugs like that, caffeine, we've all got to have our hit of a morning, but that's quite different.
Dean mentioned Big Brother. I just find it so humorous that sort of like we've got this culture that mystifies drug use so much and puts people in prison so much, but you know, they have this program on TV, shove them into a house, give them copious amounts of alcohol, and yay, see what happens. It's hypocritical.
I find it interesting, not purely for entertainment value. I find it more, it's a psychological experiment, and that's what I find interesting, is that these people are like living in this house. You know, sorry, to change the Big Brother, but yeah, no, it's just like, what is going on with this society at the moment that we,
It was really only in the 20th century that prohibition came about. It was really the 1930s or so. So it's been an experiment for the last 70 years. Before that, there were virtually no laws against most of these drugs. They might have been looked down upon, but they weren't illegal.
British government, the British Empire was built on opium drugs.
It was. But they actually have a very good program in Britain. You can register as a dependent user and be looked after under the national health system. Switzerland heroin trials, injecting facilities. That's some of the stuff with injecting drug use. But I think marijuana is one of the biggest cash crops in Australia. What about the money? If we had that money in the community, you know, we wouldn't be worried about housing. We wouldn't have the same blood-borne virus issues. You know, we wouldn't have those transmission issues. So we actually do have the resources in the community to do a much better job.
Okay, on that level of marijuana, in fact, both of you are trying to piss dope off, and you're having a problem dealing with a substitute for dope.
There is none. It's just cold turkey. And
but would you be happy about complete decriminalisation of taxing of marijuana?
I would have to say yes.
Yes.
Because it would have made my fucking teenage years a hell of a lot bloody easier.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Would have been cheaper.
I reckon.
Okay, so can we decriminalise drugs?
I think it would be fantastic. I think most of the problems around drug use occur because of their illegal status. I don't think there is much otherwise.
Hey, listen, this is blah, blah, blah. We're out of here. We're going to keep talking because we've got a lot more to do. But listen, thank you, everyone, for being here. Keep going with that point.
Yeah, well, I think drug use itself is not a problem in itself. I don't think drugs themselves cause many as many issues as the illegal status. They don't cause homelessness, they don't cause financial loss. Drugs don't, the illegal status does.
Okay, illegal status, what do you reckon?
I agree.
Do you all agree?
Except for tobacco and alcohol,
Yeah.
perhaps, which are more dangerous to the body.
Well,
Most of the
$3.30 pots at the exchange I paid last night at Vanilla Road.
But if you were a wealthy capitalist, you'd be able to afford it.
Yeah, I know, but I want to do good in the community.
I hate vanilla anyway. It's never been my favourite flavour.
Exactly. No, okay, but what else do we do apart from that?
I don't know, I reckon educate the public. I'm one of those people who says...
This program is proudly brought to you by the Peel Dance Bar, corner of Peel and Wellington Streets, Collingwood.